So I just released my top 50 coasters video, and anytime anyone releases one of these, there are people wondering about certain coasters that were left off the list. Sometimes it's just a favorite of someone's that the YouTuber simply didn't think of as highly of, and there's no other explanation other than it's a difference in taste. Other times you notice certain coasters on the list, but something similar was left off that you might be thinking was just as good or maybe even better than what was on the list. Maybe there's a particular reason, and I'm going to touch on a few notable omissions in this video. Honorable mention goes to Ultra Twister at Six Flags Astro World, which blew my mind back in 2002, and is still one of the most unique and interesting coasters I've ever ridden. I really wanted it to make my top 50 because of that, and it might have if I could have gotten some re-rides on it at Six Flags America, where it was originally supposed to be relocated to, but that didn't happen. But I'll start off with American Thunder at Six Flags St. Louis, the GCI wooden coaster. I have both Mystic Timbers and Prowler in my top 40, but American Thunder didn't make my top 50. It is still an excellent GCI, but certainly not as good as Mystic or Prowler at their best. It's a very fun ride with solid airtime and a great night ride, but it didn't quite make it into my top 50. Next is Powder Keg at Silver Dollar City. I obviously love launch coasters, and this one made my top 25 last December, but now it's out of my top 50. How did so many coasters leapfrog it? Well, my first trip to Silver Dollar City was in May 2018, and it was my first new park as a true coaster enthusiast. Plus, I was going to be picking up coaster credit number 100 on the trip, and my parents were with me, and my mom is a huge fan of this ride, and we did that one first. My excitement level, plus all those other factors, caused me to overrate this ride. Upon my return in April this year, I realized with those re-rides that I had overrated it, but it's certainly still a fun coaster, and it just barely missed my top 50. Next is XFlight at Six Flags Great America, the wing coaster. I mentioned how much I love wing coasters. It's my favorite coaster type, and Gatekeeper is very high on my list. Many people would probably think XFlight shouldn't be too far behind Gatekeeper, if not ahead of it. But Gatekeeper was my first wing coaster before I even knew that there was such a thing. So XFlight wasn't as new or surprising to me when I got around to it. Plus, I was blown away by Goliath already, so XFlight was already playing second fiddle in the park. My story surrounding Gatekeeper is a very good one. It's too long to get into here, but that will always hold it up very high on my list. Every ride on it, I get those feelings back. As far as stories surrounding a coaster goes, it's a top 3 all-time for me. Next up is Riddlers Revenge at Six Flags Magic Mountain, the B&M stand-up coaster. I put Green Lantern on my list, so where is Riddler's Revenge? Well, the problem there is that I rode Riddler back in December 2018, and I hadn't quite figured out how to deal with those B&M over-the-shoulder restraints with rock-hard bars right next to your head. I got some headbanging on Riddler, which spoiled it to a certain degree. I have now figured out how to ride these without getting headbanging, so Green Lantern without headbanging was so much fun. If it were reversed and I had done Green Lantern in December and Riddler's Revenge 2 months ago, then Riddler's Revenge would probably be ranked higher than Green Lantern. Next up is Griffin, the B&M dive coaster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. I obviously like B&M dive coasters since I put 3 of them in my top 50, but people are probably wondering, what about Griffin? Well, I got a little bit of headbanging on Griffin. Not enough to ruin it, but enough to move it a bit down the list. Plus, I felt that Griffin's layout was kind of weak by comparison. It's a drop, an Immelman, then a drop, an Immelman. That second inversion should have been a dive loop just to keep it from being so repetitive. Even the absence of a second inversion would have been better than doing the same one it just did. The other three B&M dive coasters in North America have much better layouts, in my opinion. I will give it to Griffin about the amazing view from the top and how it drops under a bridge, and that it's 10 seats wide, which increases capacity and allows me to be able to sit even further out on the wing, which I love. But those other issues hold it down below the other dive coasters for me. And finally, I have to talk about all of Knott's Berry Farm's top 3 coasters. Accelerator is the most powerful launch I've ever experienced, but I think I actually prefer the slightly less powerful launches of the Strata coasters. Also, Accelerator being barely over 200 feet just doesn't compare to the 400 plus foot height of the Stratas. those are so intimidating and exhilarating, while Accelerator's 205-foot height just wasn't. It wasn't quite as intimidating. And also at Knott's Berry Farm, there is Hang Time, the Gerstlauer dive coaster. However, this isn't really a dive coaster. The hold isn't at the edge like it is with the B&Ms. And after the hold, you scoot forward along the incline before finally dropping. I think Gerstlauers are better when they just simply go over the top and immediately drop. But beyond that, Hang Time is an excellent ride, and I love that it's lap bars only with 5 inversions. I just don't like it as much as my favorite 3 B&M dive coasters. And then, there is admittedly the biggest injustice on my list, the absence of Ghost Rider. This one is not the ride's fault, as it rode great for me. It's not the park's fault, as I think this is an outstanding park. It is my body's fault. I was sick when I went to the park. Now, I wasn't contagious, and I could get around all right, but I wasn't feeling well enough to be able to handle the intensity of a ride that's also very long. Hang Time and Accelerator were short enough that I could handle them fine. But Ghost Rider being more intense than those two, plus being almost triple the duration, counting only the high speed times, that was almost too much for me to be able to handle. Another 10 seconds or so would have been too much for me to handle. If I were healthy on that visit, I have a feeling that Ghost Rider would not only be my favorite in the park, but it would probably be in my top 50 ahead of Shivering Timbers, maybe even into my top 30 ahead of Prowler. So for those of you who are huge fans of Ghost Rider, and I know of some that certainly are, I hope this answers that question for you. It was only because I wasn't feeling well. Even with that, though, I could tell that this was an excellent ride. But that'll do it for the ones that I could think of. Any others that you might be wondering about, feel free to ask me in the comments. Thank you for watching. Always be fair to yourself and treat yourselves well. You all have been awesome. I will see you next time.